outside. I see behind your curtains, it's the daylight coming through.
Yeah.
How are you, Jamey?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's 1 o'clock here in St. Louis where I am.
And what's weather? It's cold outside, it's warm outside, or?
Yesterday it was very warm. It felt like a summer day, but today it got cold again. It's cold and rainy today. How about where you are?
Okay. Yeah, it's quite cold and rainy.
Yeah, the rain. It's have the rain, but not the cool temperature. Oh, of course, we have cool temperatures here. So really cool.
It was a really fall day. Yeah.
Okay, we're just checking what. Yes, yeah. Okay, now we are really online.
Hast du den Stream? Wir haben den Stream noch nicht.
Yeah, I have my partners are sitting outside the picture and are talking that we are not in the stream now. Just we waiting.
You just build up all the games before the stream, so you have a nice back view.
Yeah, I love it. And those look like some pretty new games there over on behind your left.
Yeah. That's from Pendulum Tapestry. I must say I have everything.
You do have everything, yeah.
So.
Okay, there's still some technical problems.
Yeah, but I don't know why.
Warst nur 1 Minute online und dann wieder offline.
Okay, then I.
Jetzt.
Okay.
Nicht mehr? Ich hänge auch noch hinterher.
Okay.
So,
we are checking.
Jamey, there is a question. I just want you to know that we didn't talk to anyone. You will know.
Okay, secrets. So, I think I see us there on the big screen, but I don't know what time it is. Yeah, okay, we gotta go. Houston, we are online.
Okay.
Finally.
We did it.
Okay,
So, now to our viewers outside there again, hello and welcome, Mr. Jamey Stegmaier, CEO of Stonemaier Games. I have a lot of games behind me.
You do, yeah. Yeah, thanks so much for having me today. It's awesome to talk to people over in Europe today, especially, and anyone who's listening in the US or other parts of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for me it's pretty special because we only write emails. So to talk to you in person, it's really quite nice. I'm really happy about this.
It's for me the first time to talk with Jamey in live.
For me as well.
I also wrote only emails with him to, hi Jamey, do you have a game for me?
Right.
But now it's the first time. And we know you from Facebook AMA or something like this. You are very
open
to the new media. Is that I think what you see, what you say, you must do this as the new times are coming out, the internet, to get this information from the user and so on and so on?
Yeah, I think the idea of me having a relationship with the people who are curious about our games or who love our games, who support our games, that's really important to me. And I think it's good for my company, but it feels good to me to connect with people like that and to answer questions or just have random discussions about our games or games from other designers and other publishers. It's just part of being in the industry and the community that I really enjoy.
Yeah, well, you were really pretty communicative. Yeah. So we asked the community to send us some questions so we can ask you. And I think we start.
Yeah. But before you start, I will say to the stream outside, if you have any question, just write it down in the chat and we take the time to ask a question, Jamey. So it's open to you also, the chat and our viewers. Okay.
Great.
So first question, why and when did you start designing games? Your first game was Viticulture, I think. And the Kickstarter was pretty successful, so how did it happen that you designed viticulture, a game about wine. When did you start designing games?
Yeah. I have two answers for that. The first is that when I was a kid, maybe 8 or 9 years old, I started to design games then, just for fun. And so throughout my life, usually it would be like I would play a published game. I would play Scotland Yard. I would play Risk. I would play other games. And then I would design my version of that game. And then as an adult, I still had that hobby in mind. But I saw games on Kickstarter start to be successful. And I thought, I love this idea of Kickstarter. I love this idea of connecting with people one-on-one through this platform. And I had this hobby where I love designing games. And so in 2011, I started designing viticulture with the intent being that I wanted to design a game that could appeal to non-gamers and gamers alike. I didn't want it to be like a fantasy or science fiction game, even though I love those themes. I wanted it to be something that would be accessible to a lot of different people. And so that's why I worked on that theme in that game.
That theme is absolutely great because I love wine.
Yeah, that's my question to Jamey. Do you love wine? Do you like wine?
Oh,
I like wine. It isn't my drink of choice if I'm going to drink something alcoholic, but I do enjoy wine. I had to research a lot, learn a lot about it. I didn't know much about it going into the game design.
What is your favorite drink? Is it whiskey or is it milk, so that we can expect in the future a game about this?
Really, my favorite probably alcoholic drink is cider. I like hard cider. Do you have? Yeah, that's pretty popular here in the U.S. I think. Is that prevalent in Europe as well?
Yes, it depends on the country. In Sweden, for example, is cider very, very popular. Here in Germany,
Great Britain as well.
Yeah.
But in Germany, it's not.
It's only just
well
original spots where they like cider.
Yeah, there are a couple of spots spots in the country where there's something similar, like Appleboy, it's called.
Yeah.
But it's not exactly the same as cider.
Yes, this is the nearest thing we have here.
Yeah.
but not this popular as I spent a lot of time on holiday in Sweden, and there we get cider in every corner.
Okay.
But not in Germany.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I can. I have some cider from Sweden there. I can give it to you.
Oh, really?
Okay.
I had it in France years ago.
Yeah.
I remember going to some restaurants in France, and they gave us a big carafe of cider. That was really nice.
Yeah, in France it's pretty typical as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. So, when you design a game, did you happen to be stuck some time, and so that you didn't know how to continue, and what did you do when it happened? Did it happen?
That's a great question. It does happen. Oh yeah, it happens all the time. So it depends. I think two things can happen there. Sometimes I just take a break and I focus on another game. Usually I'm designing 2 games at a time. So if I'm stuck on one game, or I'm more excited about one game than the other one, then I'll focus on that game, or I'll switch over to the other game.
Okay.
That really helps. Every now and then though, I just don't get unstuck, and it's partially maybe mental or psychological, but part of it is just I can't figure it out. The game maybe just isn't good enough. It isn't fun enough. And so I have many games that I start to design, and I get to that point and I'm like, there are better games out there that do this better. I'll just play those games and I'll focus my design time on another game. And that happens all the time.
Okay.
And did you how many % of the games you designed were really published by yourself?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Well, so far at Stegmaier Games, we've published 5 of my games. And over the last 8 years, I've had at least, many ideas for games, like hundreds of ideas for games, and games that I've actually entered the brainstorming process with or started to prototype, probably around 100. So 5 games, so about 5%, I guess, actually become games.
I think that's pretty good.
I don't know
because a lot of the ideas that are sent to us are not nice, but they are missing the last kick.
Yeah. I know what you mean. You can play it, but
And
what is new? What is innovation? It's mechanical, okay, but why should I buy this? It's the hook. Why should I buy this game? Because I have a scythe here, so I need another scythe. No, that's the same thing. Is and that's right. How much time goes on from one prototype or from the first idea? When you say, okay, that's my first idea, and now the game is ready to print, is going out. Is there a couple of days, couple of months?
Couple of days.
Yeah.
Good one.
It depends on the game. A couple of days. That would be nice. So I'll look at the games behind you there. So Scythe I pretty much worked on that full time for a year.
Okay.
So that was about
Only
12 months. But from idea to Kickstarter, at least for Scythe. Then it was another 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was pretty fast. But I was pretty much only focusing on that. That was my job for that year, to design and develop Scythe.
And so amazing. It's one of my favorite games. Sorry to interrupt, but.
And then Charterstone took longer. Charterstone had several points. You mentioned, Inga, when I got stuck. So I got stuck 2 times. I had to take a break from it. I had to come back to it. That was a very difficult game to design. That took around 18 months, working on it a lot. Viticulture took around 9 months. And Tapestry actually went pretty quickly, relatively. I think that was around 9 months.
That's
and I'm
fast.
currently working on a game that is almost 4 years into design at this point. It's a massive game. And I've never designed a game. I never thought it would take 4 years to design a game, and it's probably take another. So hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, 4 years, but we have a couple of games that take a couple of years until they are published. So that's not. I think you're pretty fast with a couple of months, definitely.
You must say, Jamey, you do this stuff alone. I thought in the last year you got one person in your company, when I remember right.
We now have two.
Yeah, I think so.
Someone that we just hired recently, and Joe, who we hired at the end of last year. And so they are not involved in the design process, but it is helpful to have a team of people locally. They're all in St. Louis that I can gather together for a play test whenever we need to.
That's very valuable.
Was this decision to get more people some progress because of your Scythe release? Because we have now heard you work 1 year for Scythe, and then the Kickstarter. I was also in the Kickstarter, so I know you gave so much information out, and there was this delay in process, and so on and so on. Was it a hard and tough time for you? For this games especially?
For Scythe in particular? Or Scythe did have some interesting things that happened after the Kickstarter, or really at the end of the Kickstarter, that made me want to move on from Kickstarter and try other methods. And so that was an interesting, challenging summer, because everything went really well. It was a weird summer because we delivered on time. The game was received really well. Like, everything went great, and yet it was still, it was just a weird thing, a weird time to have people be really, really excited about something and to express that passion in some ways that are very positive and some ways that were very challenging. And so we moved away from Kickstarter after that, and I think that was a really nice move for me and my company. And then, I hired Joe. Hiring Joe was completely unrelated to that. It was just we had a bunch of different jobs that I had outsourced to other people for a long time, and we brought those together into one job for Joe to do.
Yeah, it's pretty great to have some colleagues and just not be a one-man company or one-woman company. So, as a game designer and as a publisher in the same person, is it difficult for you to find the right balance between those two functions, since publishers often trim the prototypes they want to publish and cut things out?
I like being involved in both sides of that process, because it means from the very beginning, when I'm thinking about a game, I'm not just thinking about the mechanisms or the theme I'm thinking about the entire marketability
Yeah.
of the game, the big picture. Like,
Yeah.
and I can make decisions. Like Charterstone, we included metal coins in Charterstone. A publisher most publishers I don't think would have done that. But
Yeah.
to me, it felt right to include something permanent so that when you're done playing Charterstone, you can take those metal coins and use them in another game. I thought that was a nice thing to have in a legacy game like that. So I can make decisions like that, and I can think about them from the very beginning of the design process. It does mean that I need to have checks and balances and accountability with other people to say, Jamey, we probably want to think twice about that, or maybe not include this, or maybe you should include this. But I like being able to make those decisions most often.
As you said, you think about the market chance of a game. How do you design it to get it into the market? How important are your partners like Feuerland? So do you say, okay, I want to design a game like Tetris 3, which is very expensive. Do you say, okay, I do this one, or has Feuerland some chance to say, can we take a little bit nicer, a little bit cheaper there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Feuerland and Inga and Bastian and Frank they're some of our best partners in the world. I love working with all of them.
I love working with you too. Absolutely.
And so I highly respect their opinions. If Inga has an opinion in one of our rule books, Inga ends up looking at a bunch of our rule books, I respect that opinion. I don't always make the change, but I always listen to it and consider it. And same with Frank. If Frank has a thought about production, in fact, I just talked to Frank the other day about the idea of, does he prefer us to have a retail version of a game and a deluxe version of the game, or does he prefer us to have a retail version of the game and then a nice add-on that you can just add on to it instead of two completely different versions of the game? And Frank had a great opinion about that. So, yeah, I do. I don't always go with what Frank says, but I always listen to what he has to say.
But that is the important thing. You stick to your gut, but you're listening to the arguments of the other people and think about it, and that's important.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have lost the.
We have a question. What were your feelings when the reactions to Pendulum were mixed despite the high score at the Stonemaier test days, especially the criticism regarding the thematics of the game being weak?
That's a great question. And it was something that I was definitely nervous about Pendulum, because it did have such high scores at our design day. But at the design day, the designer was there teaching the game to other people. And so they were having a different experience than I think most people will have playing Pendulum, because you don't have the designer right there.
That's
as for the theme
important.
itself, that's it. Yeah. The most criticisms I've heard about Pendulum were about a choice that I made, probably a bad choice, about using plastic in the components instead of wood, which is a decision that I made based off some information that I had about Australia and fumigation laws that were incorrect. And so that was totally my fault. As for the theme, I guess I can see what you're saying, that there are some disconnects between the theme and the mechanisms. But I don't know. It's a Euro game. I'm okay with it not being feeling like a completely immersive thematic experience, as long as people enjoy the sense of progression and the time optimization in it. If they aren't enjoying that, I think that's more of a problem to me.
This is maybe a problem to you because you have Scythe. It was so high rated as very, very many good reactions. You have Wingspan, Flügelschlag, we talked with Elizabeth, 500,000 copies of the game were sold. Wow. And Viticulture is one of the greatest Euro games out there, if you read BGG and so on. And then there is a Pendulum. So you have maybe this iPhone effect, because what's the next big thing? It's from Stonemaier. It must be great. Is that maybe a problem for you? For Stonemaier games?
Yeah, it is an interesting challenge. I like that people are excited and curious about the next game that we have coming out. I think that's a good problem to have. But it means that there's, I think, maybe a little extra pressure on us for every game, for the next game to be a unique and innovative and a truly joyful experience for anyone who plays it. And that's tough to pull off every time. It's something that we aim for every time. We don't publish a lot of games. Pendulum is our only release of 2020, so we put a lot of time and effort into it in the hopes that it will reach a lot of people and bring a lot of people joy. But sometimes it doesn't happen. Even with Tapestry, I thought Tapestry would end up being bigger than it has been so far. But I think people will hopefully continue to explore it with the expansions that we release for it.
Yeah, that's a good question, because we have now a question in the chat who's asking, Inga especially, if Tapestry is, the expansion for Tapestry is released in Germany.
Yes, it will be released in Germany, but it will be 2021. It will be next year, and we actually can't give you an actual date, but the plans are that it will be released in Germany as well.
Yeah. So, is there coming a next expansion maybe to Tapestry? Something we can hear now?
We are working on one. Yeah, one that there's something in it that I'm really, really excited to share, but it'll be a while before it's ready, so I can't talk about it yet. But we are working on a second expansion for Tapestry.
Okay, that's enough information. A second expansion.
Jamey is the master of secrets.
Yeah, I know.
We are too.
Jamey is like the pop-up stores in the internet. Okay, this game is coming out now. Next day you can pre-order this. Just come on. Right. No information. Okay, I give you 1 week for getting information about this game, and then pre-order it or don't pre-order it.
So I'm curious. I don't know if I can ask this, but you at Stonemaier, I know that Feuerland is releasing the Wingspan expansion, and has kind of announced that. Are there any new games that Feuerland are announcing at Essen Spiel this year? That you can say.
Yeah, it's a small game, just New York Zoo by Uwe Rosenberg for our Blue Line. It's
just watching. No. There it is. Behind Inga. If Inga can get a little bit to the right, you see it there behind the tapestry that's standing there.
Oh, yes.
It's a small puzzle game with what's the word for Tiervermehrung? Breeding. With the fun of not breeding. So it's typical Uwe. Yeah, it's very nice. I like it with little small animals.
I don't like it because Yasmin, my wife, is playing. It's focused on the puzzle thing, and it's puzzling so fast that we others are. I'm ready. Okay, so we have on the game.
So we have only this game this year, and next year there will be a couple of new games from us. A new Terra Mystica standalone will be published, and we've got 2 other things in the pipeline which we hope will be finished next year. And
I hope.
Yeah.
I hope. I'm counting on.
Yeah.
We don't have enough games.
Standalone?
Yes, it is.
That's pretty exciting.
With a lot of variability, where the abilities of the nations and of the big building, I don't know the English word right now, are shuffled at the beginning and randomly distributed, and a couple of other small changes. We have a preview on our website of the Spiel.digital, also in English. So you can have a look over there.
So now Jamey going off. Okay, I have must watch this game.
I love Terra Mystica. I'm excited about it. I even designed a fan faction for Terra Mystica that I sent to Frank a few months ago.
Oh, I didn't know that. But it might be used somehow. I don't know. I think he's planning some secret faction stuff.
So many secrets here.
So another question.
And I see a question here now. It's talking about from the chat. There is I'm a big fan of Wingspan. Are there future expansions planned after Oceania? Yes, we can say.
We already know that, but please.
Please.
Sure. Yeah, and not everyone may know the plan, but the plan is to have one expansion for every continent, even Antarctica. We haven't announced the order of those continents, especially since it might change depending on what Elizabeth is the most excited to design next. But she is currently working on the next continent that will reveal sometime next year, I think. And then we have 3 more after that. So we have Asia, Africa, South America, and Antarctica.
Will there be a legendary box after this? Because now in this Wingspan it's the expansion Europe, but that's finished. There's no more space in it.
Right. We are working with Panda on a big box with an organizer, a modular organizer inside the box. Originally, we were going to wait until we released all the expansions to do that because we don't really even know what's in all the future expansions. But we're going to design it big enough and modular enough that it should. The goal is for it to hold all things that we could possibly make to put in it. So we are working on that, and hopefully that'll be a 2021 release. The box, but there won't be any game in it. It'll just be a box and an organizer.
Like the Scythe legendary box, just with an organizer. Yeah.
With an organizer. Yeah, exactly.
So I hope Feuerland will publish this.
I guess we will.
Frank is not here. I'm not talking about this.
Did you expect Wingspan to be such a great success as it is when you first saw it?
When I first saw it, I first saw a very early version of it at Gen Con in 2016.
Wow.
And I was excited about it then, but it grew a lot after that.
Okay.
Elizabeth's design grew, my development of it, like I kind of helped add the player mat system in there. But after we had the published version of Wingspan, I was enthusiastic that it would do well, but I still wasn't sure if hobby gamers would give it a try. But once I knew, after that first print run where people were obviously very excited about it and were willing to try it, then I knew it was going to be a pretty big hit. Not this big. This big has been, it's been great that it's reached this many people.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
For us as well.
And I know, Inga, you've been so helpful for all the proofreading and the translations. And you love birds too, right? So it's a theme that's close to you.
Actually, I'm a biologist.
But biology is from great animals to small animals, so
more plants.
More plants. Okay.
Biomimetics, but
So
I don't work in this field, as you can see, as you know.
the next expansion for Wingspan, the plants where the birds are living.
Maybe.
Another question is, what's your favorite German game designer?
Ooh, that's interesting.
My favorite German. I will probably say Uwe Rosenberg. He's been such an inspiration to me, and I even got to work with him a little bit on one of the small box viticulture expansions, the More Visitors expansion. But yeah, I love his games, and I've learned so much from them. And I don't think he isn't German, but I love Alexander Pfister.
Yeah, he's from Austria.
Austria.
He is German.
No,
oh,
Austrian.
Okay.
Yeah.
Austria. Yeah. So I love his work too. I'm very excited about his new Essen release, Cloud City.
Cloud Age. Cloud Age is the new.
Cloud Age.
Yeah. So we have another question. How does you deal with reproaches that some of your games weren't play tested thoroughly enough, like Tapestry?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. We playtest our games a lot. We playtest them locally a lot, and then we playtest them blind playtest around the world hundreds of times for every game. So I think it might be a slight misconception that the quantity of playtest isn't enough, because we playtest I think more than enough. I think the challenge with Tapestry that I didn't realize until maybe it was a little bit too late is that I needed to employ better data analysis techniques while looking at all of that playtest data that we had gathered. And so since that experience, we've there's someone who is very good at data analysis. It's his expertise. It's what he does for a living, a guy named Jeremy. And whenever we have new playtest data for any game or any expansion now, I sent it to Jeremy and I said, Jeremy, can you analyze this? Can you offer your inside knowledge about this? Things that I can't see that you can. And so Jeremy does this for all of our playtest data now, and I think it's really helped. It definitely has helped with the new Tapestry expansion, and it will help with the future Tapestry expansions. It helped with Pendulum and other games that we have. So I think that was maybe the key issue with the original Tapestry. Although with Tapestry, I kind of knew that given all the different Tapestry cards, the different civilizations, there were going to be things that people discovered when it was played hundreds of times by people who played the game hundreds of times or dozens of times. And that's why there is the thing in the rulebook, in the Tapestry rulebook, that says, please report your winning score and your winning faction or your winning civilization, so we can use that data and learn from it and maybe make little tweaks along the way. Something I kind of learned from watching Terra Mystica grow over the years. How certain, over time, after many, many thousands of people had played Terra Mystica, some people thought, okay, these factions are slightly better and these factions are slightly worse. And I think it's great that you can gather all that data together and learn from it over time.
Yeah, I think the variety of Tapestry, of the different possibilities, is so great, so big that you just can't playtest it enough.
Yeah, but I understand him because I'm from the IT, so I'm a software developer, and I know this. A lot of tests doesn't make the product good. I can run thousands and thousands of tests, and the software says, okay, everything is fine, but the first user who's clicking on the screen says, oh, well, that's not. It doesn't feel right.
Right.
Thanks for this answer from the guy who has this question. For the honest answer was yeah.
There. Is there any film or pop culture franchise for which you would love to design a game, and does something come to your mind spontaneously, not taking into account the actual licensing?
Okay. From pop culture, well, the answer that I've had for this for a while now is that there is a novel series called Red Rising. It's a novel series that I really, really love. And a couple of years ago, I tried to design a game in that world because I love that world so much. And I wasn't successful at it. And I've since returned to it and tried to think about it. And maybe someday it will be a game. But that's the one that I've talked about for quite some time now. That's one that I really wanted to get right because I love that world so much. And I wanted to share it with people who haven't discovered that novel series yet. But yeah, that's kind of the grail intellectual property for me.
The novel series is available in German as well. So it's also called Red Rising.
Okay.
I'm looking
for people who would like to read it in German. It's available as well.
I'm a big fan of Wheel of Fortune.
The never-ending series.
The Wheel of Time. Sorry, Wheel of Time.
The never-ending series.
I like a game from this. So this would be nice.
Yeah. I'm actually reading book 14 right now in that series.
14.
For the first time. Yeah, I'm at the very end.
Yeah, it's in Germany. The problem is the books are divided into 2 or 3 times from one book. So we have 36 or something like this. Is the it's in my room. It's like 2 meters of books or something like that.
I've read a couple of them in my teenage years. But it's just the never-ending series, and I don't like book series that don't seem to be finished.
But it's finished. It's going.
Finally.
It's finally getting finished. I do have to take these questions.
What were the most important lessons you've learned over the years since you founded Stonemaier Games with Ellen?
Oh, we could spend hours talking. I've learned so much along the way. A lot of the times I've learned through making mistakes. One thing that comes to mind is I've learned the value of transparency. You mentioned this a little bit earlier, that I talk a lot to people and I share things about my company, inside things. But I've really learned, and I learned this during the Kickstarter times, that sometimes, often sharing accurate news, even if it's bad news, or sharing that there's no news, is better than saying nothing and just letting people wonder.
People appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's better to. I'm very often in Kickstarter projects, and I like the projects when they say, okay, it's coming a little bit late. The boat was not really loaded up. There was customs. The production in China was not ready. That's better than nothing. You don't know. Okay, it's coming. When is it coming? And so on and so on. It's communication. It's really is it important for you to communicate with the player really often? So like your YouTube videos, your Facebook videos, and so on. Is this one key factor where you say, okay, this is maybe what Stonemaier games make a little bit different than other publishers?
Maybe a little bit, yeah. I think
so.
Yeah. I do talk a lot about other games from other publishers, and I do see some other publishers do that. I think there are a lot of publishers out there that love games from other designers and other publishers, but maybe they don't talk about them quite as much as I do and as a few other publishers do. Yeah. Sometimes people get to my Instagram channel and they ask, are these your games that you're talking about? Or like, why are you talking about these other games? They don't even know which ones are Stonemaier games or which ones aren't Stonemaier games based on the way I talk about them.
I have another question from the chat, and you do your favorite game mechanism videos. Which mechanism was the most important innovation over the last decade, in your opinion?
Ooh, that's interesting.
So I did a video around this time last year of, I think, like the 16 most influential games. So in that video, I picked 16 different mechanisms. If I had to pick just one,
okay, let's say two.
Well, two. I mean, probably the first one that comes to mind is worker placement.
Me too.
Uwe Rosenberg, like we mentioned earlier, was one of the first ones who did that. I think that's been a huge influence on the hobby, and people continue to innovate with that mechanism. And the other, this is kind of an easy answer, but I would probably say deck building and bag building.
Yeah, deck building. You are my friend. The best gaming in the world.
Yeah.
Our technician over the back just said.
Another question. What happened to you, Paul, on Scythe? Will there be a two-player version or a Scythe 2.0?
Yeah, so I put a poll on the Scythe Facebook group a while ago, I think maybe earlier this year, where I said, I'm done making expansions to Scythe. The Scythe game world is done, but I am open to making a completely other game, a completely new game in that world. Because I think it's a pretty cool world to explore, and I loved working with Jakub Rosalski. And so in that poll, the poll was just kind of a starting point. But one thing I learned from the poll was that the thing that people were actually the most excited about was a Scythe deck building game. Yeah, that was the number one thing.
I'm your man.
And then a Scythe two-player game was number two. Yeah. Stonemaier Games doesn't publish any games that only play at 2 players yet. That isn't something that we've looked at or focused on. All of our games play really from one player up to 5 or 6 players. So there is no Scythe 2-player game in the works, but I am still kind of working on brainstorming another game in the Scythe world that will hopefully it will be a game. I don't know at this point if it actually will be a game, but I'm hoping it will be.
One question about the player count, because I think your games with Scythe were the first where really make the breakthrough by the market with you can play it from 1 to 5, and not only with some simple solo player rules, because you have this automa, which is a really hard guy not a virtual guy who is playing against you. Do you think this is maybe a little? I think it's a little bit by you, this breakthrough in this market, and so on, the solo market, which is coming out, and so on and so on.
I think that Scythe boosted the solo market, and Automa Factory with Morten did a big chunk of work in this boosting the market for solo play.
I agree. Yeah, and really, I have to give credit to Morten Monrad Petersen from Denmark. He started this Automa system. Started with Tuscany in viticulture, and he started applying it to our other games. And so, really, all the innovation comes from Morten. All I said was, I see that people are enjoying this. I see that this is a benefit. We're reaching more people this way, people who really enjoy playing solo games. And so we did start to add that to all of our games, except for Between Two Castles, which ended up being a game that didn't sell as well as I thought it would. And I think part of the reason is that it didn't have a solo version in it. So we are working on a Castles expansion, and that expansion will have the solo mode in the expansion.
And now I know some guy who is cheering up. Woo, woo, it's solo mode.
Yeah.
We have to admit that it probably won't be published in German.
Okay,
because it didn't sell well with us as well, which I think it's pretty sad because I like it. You can play it with a lot of people and you have a lot of interaction with others. I just don't understand why it didn't sell that well.
Because we in Germany are more thinking. We have to see and sit above a game and okay, what, and don't play from the bell.
from the bell, yeah, maybe.
Another question: what is important? Appearance over function or vis-a-vis?
Could you say it again?
Yeah, appearance over functions.
Appearance over function or vice versa.
Oh,
vice versa. That's right. Sorry.
It's fine.
I mean, I would say that the biggest thing is for the game to be fun. If it's not fun, none of that other stuff matters. Under fun, I think maybe mechanisms and then theme and appearance below that. I think that it's ideally you can have all of them in a game. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. But for me, it would be fun and then mechanisms and then appearance and theme at the bottom.
Yeah.
Did you find any difference because you're selling your games worldwide? So there's the North American market, there's the Europe market, there's the Asia, Australia market. Is it hard for you to find one appearance or one functions where you say, okay, that would be fun for all the guys, or would be in the middle fun for some people? The average is fun for all, but I don't know if it's really working in Germany or is it really working in Australia or something like this.
Did you experience that different cultures have different
point of views for a game or something like this?
Yeah.
And are you trying to satisfy this needs for this cultures?
And the different graphics are appealing to different countries.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. I would say I think about it in a few different ways. One is when I design my games, most of my games are those that have a fairly high level of agency and control. So you have control over your decisions, but usually with a little bit of, not luck, but variability. Like in viticulture, you're drawing cards from a deck instead of seeing a few cards face up and draw. So there's a little bit of a slight lack of agency there, but a lot of the other things you're doing in viticulture, you have a lot of control over. And that is kind of a universal principle that I apply to all of our games. Even though I'm sure there are people across the world who maybe enjoy games with a lot more luck or even more agency and heavier decisions than that. For the international side, I think I look more at, are we doing anything in this game that will exclude a lot of people usually based on the theme more so than the mechanisms. I don't want to do anything to really offend anyone or make them feel like they are not welcome in one of our games or one of our worlds. And to take that one level higher in the publishing level, that's why we work with people like Inga and Frank at Feuerland to publish our games worldwide and to make sure when we do that those games are accessible and welcoming to people in different countries.
because often you just don't know what the special things of the country are, and I said that, or there were a couple of laughs at Facebook or social media because the German name of wingspan is Flügelschlag, which is translated into flap, which is I learned not that great as an English word, but wingspan is would have been a very dry name, very technical in Germany, and it wouldn't have worked as well as
no, I think so.
Flügelschlag, which is much more poetic in German. So I think that's important
to localize a game, not only to translate it.
Yeah,
that's the main factor.
Yeah, for some games you just translate, but for a couple of games it's more work than just translation. Yeah. For Wingspan especially, because of the bonus cards, we just couldn't get some to work. And there is a bonus card which is in the English game, which isn't included in the German game, but we have a different bonus card because the English one wasn't working with the German trivial names. So more work than some people think.
Just one word.
And I learned throughout that process that I really need to be very aware of games that refer to either specific colors or specific names or use specific letters, because those letters aren't going to be used in all the or those colors, those names will be very different in very different languages. So,
it was a difficult decision, and some other publishers, I think they decided to put the English names as well as the local names for the birds on the cards. But we thought, okay, German words are always pretty long, or most of the time, and we just don't have the space to do that.
Okay, I have two questions from the chat. Is about the same theme. It's about hi Jamey, I love Tapestry. Can you tell us how the pandemic has influenced your work or life? And one question is about the same theme. Has the current situation an effect on your game design? Do you like to take more into account the possibility to play remotely or digitally?
Yeah, those are great questions about these interesting, unprecedented times that we're living in right now. It certainly changed my gaming habits. I used to host a game night every week in person at my house, and now when I host it, I don't host it in person. I host it online now. We usually play on Board Game Arena online. One of the nice things about that is that it means I can play with people that I wouldn't normally be able to invite to my house because they don't live in St. Louis. In terms of playtesting and game development, it has changed quite a bit. More than ever, yes. I want all of our games to be able to be played on the tabletop and digitally, even though the digital version, I think, inevitably will always take longer to be ready than the tabletop version. And in terms of playtesting, it has definitely made it more difficult. As a company, we have started gathering together once every week, once every 2 weeks, and we wear masks. We try to be very careful because I don't want any of my employees to get sick. Even though all of us are pretty good at self-isolating, but we're very careful about that. And we have started playtesting in person. Some people playtest using Tabletop Simulator and Tabletopia, but for me, it's not the same. It takes so much longer to do it that way.
Yeah. Because you just don't get to see the reactions of the people of the game. The body language is really important, and you just don't get it when playing digitally.
I mean, it's also another medium, because I have played also digital, and if you take a dice from the table, you take the dice from the table and not with the mouse, and I forgot to click and now it's rolled. Oh no, it's a different feeling on the table.
Absolutely.
Another question maybe. given you like cats and the topic seems to be a hot at the moment, can we anticipate a cat game from Stonemaier Games?
I do love cats. I don't know if you can see Biddy back here on the chair.
No, not really. It's outside.
It's pretty small, yeah. But I don't have any game planned with a cat's theme. But
why not?
But I do have. I do try to include my cats in pretty much all of our games. They're not in Wingspan. I don't think that would work well. But they appear in Scythe. I think they appear in Viticulture. I know they appear in Charterstone.
Yeah.
They don't appear in Pendulum, but they definitely appear in Tapestry. And we'll get
Between
them into
Two
Wingspan
Castles.
someday.
In the artwork.
Between Two Castles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that would have been a better fit a little bit earlier, but still. Do you think you are missing out on some great games due to your guidelines for the player count being 1 to 5 players?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, there's so many games that I love that play only at 2 players. Some of my favorite games play only at 2 players, or some of my favorite games only play up to 4 players. But the great thing is, there are many other great publishers in the world other than Stonemaier Games.
Absolutely.
So I'm happy for those publishers to focus on those games. We can kind of have our little specialty that we do, and I can, there are just so many other great publishers who make wonderful games. So yes, absolutely, we're missing out on some great games, but I think if it is a truly great game, it will be published by someone, and then I'll get to play it and have fun with it.
Yeah, and 1 to 5 players always is a niche in itself. So
Right.
that's pretty good as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
One question from the chat. In times of Friday for Future protest and environmental awareness, has your opinion on plastic components changed?
Yeah, I did a blog post about this recently where I did a deep dive into the different impacts of various components. And what I learned was that the environmental impact of wood and plastic is very similar if you're using recycled plastic and recycled wood. If you're using wood, you're still cutting down trees to get that wood, and you're putting it into components. With plastic, you're using some natural resources to do that as well. But if you're using recycled plastic, then you're not adding quite as much of an impact to the environment. My number one concern really is disposable plastic. Anything that when you open a game that you immediately dispose of and it goes to a landfill. That's my number one concern right now. And so we are looking into ways to either have biodegradable shrink wrap or get rid of shrink wrap altogether. And we are also exploring, in fact, we've started implementing this. We're starting to use biodegradable plastic bags in our games that biodegrade after around 3 years. Rather than the traditional plastic that doesn't ever biodegrade. So yeah, it is something that I think about all the time, that I talk about with Panda all the time. It's not just about plastic, though. I think sometimes people think, oh, it's only about plastic. But really, anything that you make at a factory is going to have an environmental impact, no matter what its composition is.
Yeah.
That's true.
I have one question here in the chat, and I'm thinking, who is this guy? Frank Heeren is asking in the chat,
Hey,
who is that? Will there be Scythe metal leaders even though you say no more expansions? What a question!
Well, that's coming from Frank, so I have to answer it a little differently. If Frank wants a set of metal leaders for himself, I would gladly make that happen. But no, we don't have that planned for mass production. It's a huge expense. Even the metal mechs are very, very expensive to make, and takes a lot of effort and time to make them. So no, we don't have any plans to make metal leaders.
Frank says
Is that something that
he misses them.
he does?
Okay.
I've got only one last question.
Yeah, okay.
This will be the very last question.
Yeah, I'm just checking in the chat, and then. Yeah, will there be another Tapestry expansion? I think we have this one answered because you said there will be a second expansion. And yeah.
That would interest me personally, and I think you as well. In the newsletter, you said you are working on a viticulture expansion. Can you tell a little bit more about this one, please?
Yeah, I'm really, really excited about this. It's let me see what I can say, because I don't want to say too much. I can say that we did a play test of it the other day here in my office right over here, and it went really, really well. Oh man, what can I say? I can say this. I'll say this: that it is viticulture is based in Tuscany in Italy, and in this expansion, we are going to be exploring other areas of the world that are famous for their wine and their special types of wine.
That's cool.
So that's something we're exploring in this expansion.
That's very cool.
So I know two: California and Australia.
New Zealand as well, Chile, Argentina.
New Zealand has sheep, so...
No, New Zealand has a pretty, well, I think, Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh, okay. We have to talk about this later.
Are you working on the expansion with Tito Lorenz? Or is it...
It's a different one.
Okay,
yeah.
it's a different...
We started that process with Tito, and he had a great idea, and we might end up doing that someday, but we ended up going to focusing on a different direction, and I think he's focusing on a different game or a different expansion right now. So it's not that one.
Okay.
But he did a great job with Rhine Valley.
Yeah.
So I think I take the last question from the chat, and then I think this is the last thing.
This is
the last one. Okay. One last question from the chat is, what is your favorite theme? Because we have everything here from you. From birds to pendulum, fantasy, wine. Yeah. Alternative, Eastern, war.
Right. I'm going to give a slightly broad answer here, but I have found as I play more and more games that I really love games that immerse me into a different world. And it doesn't have to be a fictional world. Like with Uwe Rosenberg's farming games. Farming is not something that I know a lot about. I've never been a farmer or done much other than maybe a little gardening. But I love that he immerses you into the world of farming when you play an Uwe Rosenberg game. And then there are many other games that create a whole new world, like Scythe did, where you can immerse yourself into that world. So any game that does that well, I know it's not a specific theme, but I love that feeling of stepping into a game and living in that world for an hour or two while I play. Yeah.
I think that's the reason why a lot of people love Wingspan as well, because it's a different theme and it just takes them to notice nature much more and their surroundings, and I think that's...
I like Wingspan because you discover the birds, and you discover mechanics and function. Oh, this bird with this bird. Oh, I can do this turn now. Oh, I have discovered something new.
And that's the bird that's in my garden right now.
right.
I know him.
So,
okay, you have the last question.
The final question: what can we expect from Stonemaier Games in 2021?
Well, we've mentioned a few of them here. So the viticulture expansion, there's a small chance it will be ready by the end of 2021. The Between Two Castles expansion will be next year, and Rolling Realms. Rolling Realms is a print and play game originally that I designed at the beginning of the pandemic. That can be played with any number of people. We are going to make a printed version of that is much nicer than the print and play version, but also not very expensive. So it will be able to be played by I think it'll be worth the purchase for people who want to actually buy it. And there is one thing that I can't announce yet or don't want to announce yet. And am I missing anything? Oh, and the Wingspan big box. Hopefully that will be ready next year. The big box organizer, no gameplay, just box and organizer should be next year as well.
But it's just
So we
this
have a lot-
thing,
we have a
this
lot
little, what you don't you say. It's between you and me. Just there's nobody else. Just come on, what's the thing?
I know,
You know it.
but I want to.
Inga knows. Yeah.
Okay.
That was mean, I know.
Okay.
But it was fun.
Yeah, that's all. There's no question. I
Thank you very much
this was
for joining us
Yeah,
Thank you.
tonight.
it was nice to meet you.
Pleasure. Oh, I've got one last question.
Oh.
When the pandemic is over, will you join us at Spiele in Essen someday?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, that and the UK Games Expo I'd love to go to. I'd love to go to Lucca in Italy. I think I will be itching to go to Europe and to conventions like that when this is all over. So yeah, maybe 2022.
We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking too. It's the next step from email to now the video chat, and the next time we see us in real life. Okay, thanks a lot, Jamey. We say also a big thanks outside to the stream to our viewers who have joined us this hour. I hope you had a good time. Also, I had a good
We definitely had.
Yeah, I hope you.
Thank you
also.
very much.
And
Thank you. And thank you everyone who tuned in. This is great.
and I will just stop the stream. Maybe Jamey is getting a little bit on, so we can talk a little bit more. Maybe. Who knows? Okay.
No,
Also,
you won't get anything out of him.
maybe I can show him my cat. Who knows? Okay. So now have a good time outside and